Hi, Julia. Just to let you know, we have our live stream working now, and you have quorum. So whenever you're ready to start, you can start. Thank you for everyone's patience while we sorted out the technical issues with the live stream.
Okay, it gave me time to spill water all across my table. Anyway, I think we can get started then. So, can I have only my board members on camera, please?
Who is Tom? Is that
We've got it handled, Adam.
okay?
Perfect. Okay. Doopy-doo. All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Julia Rady. I am the chair of the Toronto Preservation Board. We have quorum, so I'm now calling meeting 23 to order. Welcome. Today's meeting is being held by video conference and it is also being live streamed online at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. Although we may be meeting in different locations today, the Preservation Board would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is also now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. If you are registered to speak today, please listen for me to call your name. I will call speakers in the order they appear on the list, and the list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the Toronto Preservation Board at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. Members, the City Clerk has provided all agenda materials on toronto.ca/council. And as a reminder, please submit and approve your motions by email. Staff are available at hertpb@toronto.ca to help with that. At this time, are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you have an interest, please raise your hand or unmute your mic and declare the nature of your interest. Seeing none, we can proceed. May I please have a motion to confirm the minutes from our meeting on September 20th, 2024? I'll move to confirm those. Thank you. All those in favor, hands up high. Marvelous. The motion carries. So I'd like to draw your attention to one new agenda item today, which we will need to vote in to introduce before we take any other action. It will be PB 23.7, 26 Millwood Road, Notice of Intention to Designate a Property under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act. I have submitted a letter with this recommendation that the board introduce and consider this report at today's meeting. Are there any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of introducing this item, please raise your hand. No opposed, motion carries. So it is now part of our agenda. So we'll proceed now with the agenda review. The first item is PB 23.1, 28 Halton Street, Notice of Intention to Designate a Property under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act. There are public speakers registered on this item, so I will hold it. The next is PB 23.2, 630 Spadina Avenue, Notice of Intention to Designate a Property under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act. There are public speakers on this item, so it's held. The next is PB 23.3, 40 to 44 Mitchell Avenue, demolition of designated heritage buildings under Section 34 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Again, there are public speakers, so I will hold this item. Then we have PB 23.4, update on Phase 2 implementation of Bill 23. Members, there is a presentation from Mary McDonald, Senior Manager, Heritage Planning, and Paul Maka, Project Manager for the Heritage Register, providing an update on Phase 2 implementation of Bill 23. Members, do you have any I think I'm going to hold this item. We're going to hear the presentation and then we'll ask our questions at that point. I think we've been waiting for this one. The next item is PB 23.5, the preservation panel minutes. May I have a motion to receive the Scarborough Preservation Panel minutes for information?
My apologies, Madam Chair. The entire connection froze there. The last item, was it held?
For
Mitchell
which,
Avenue.
Mitchell Avenue is held. We have a speaker on
Thank
that
you. Okay.
item. And then we had then we had our PB point 4 for the update on phase 2 of the implementation of Bill 23. And now we're on PB 23.5, the preservation panel minutes. We have a motion to receive the preservation panel minutes from Matthew. All those in
So
favor?
I would like to hold the minutes, please. I have a question about, yep.
All right, we will hold that item as well. Then we have the PB 23.6, the proposed 2025 meeting schedule for the Toronto Preservation Board. Members, there is a proposed schedule of meetings for the Toronto Preservation Board in 2025. These meetings, rather than being held solely by video conference, will now be hybrid with the option to attend in person. I think this would be a lovely thing that we could meet together and in person, and of course offering that hybrid option should other situations arise that keep you from attending in person, but that you may still make your attendance at the Preservation Board. Members, do you have any questions on this item? Seeing none, I will move to adopt the item. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Adam, are you in favor? Can I see your hand? Awesome, thank you. The motion carries. The last item is PB 23.7, 26 Millwood Road, notice of intention to designate a property under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act. There's a presentation from Heritage Planning staff available if the board would like to hear it. Would anybody like to hold this item? Sorry, you want to hold this item, Adam?
I think Jeff and I both want to hold it. So Jeff's hand up as well.
Okay, then this item is held and we will go back to the beginning. PB 23.1, 28 Halton Street, notice of intention to designate. We have the staff report on this item. Would my fellow members like to hear the staff report? Yes? Okay, yep. Then take it away, Anna. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Anna Martins. I think I'll just wait until the presentation is up.
Chair, can I have permission to share? Well, Chair, this is Hans from Heritage Planning. I need permission to share.
Can Hans share his screen, please? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Good morning. Once again, I'm Anna Martins, Heritage Planner on the Policy and Research Team in Heritage Planning, and I'll be presenting on item PB 23.1, 28 Halton Street, Notice of Intention to Designate a Property under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act. I'd like to thank Lindsay Parsons on the Heritage team for assisting with the research on this report. Next slide, please. Located on the north side of Halton Street at its junction with Gibbon Street, southeast of Ossington and Dundas in the Trinity Bellwoods neighborhood, the property at 28 Halton Street contains a prominent three-story house-form building completed by 1892. It was designed by Toronto architect Francis R. Heeks 2 years earlier in 1890. It is the terminal point of a long vista looking north on Gibbon Street. The property was listed on the city's Heritage Register in 1981. Following research and evaluation, staff have determined that the property at 28 Halton Street has cultural heritage value and meets 5 of the Ontario Regulation 906 criteria prescribed for municipal designation under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Next slide, please. The property at 28 Halton Street has historic value for its direct association with William Lebec, a prominent figure in Toronto's livestock industry and export trade in the late 19th and 20th centuries. He was also a key investor in the Union Stockyard Company, which later became the Ontario Stockyards, one of the largest in North America. But in 1890, Lebec purchased the former homestead of Colonel Gibbons, known as Pine Grove, shown on the bottom left and on the map at the top of Gibbons Street, marked by a red arrow. He had commissioned Francis R. Heeks to design his new residence at 28 Halton Street, as well as a late Victorian commercial block at 88 to 94 Ossington Avenue, known as the Lebec Block. Lebec's rising success in the meatpacking industry had its origins in the Trinity Bellwoods neighborhood, an area historically associated with small-scale abattoirs and the Western Cattle Market, the municipal abattoir at Wellington and Tecumseh. Next slide, please. Designed in 1890, the property at 28 Halton Street demonstrates the work of Francis R. Heeks, the chief architect of Ontario from 1896 to 1930. His exceptional public architecture throughout the province has been designated under the Ontario Heritage Act. His most notable provincial commissions include the Whitney Block, located within the Queen's Park Precinct, the province's first purpose-built government office building, as well as the Government House at Chorley Park in Toronto. The property at 28 Halton Street reflects Heeks' skillful approach applied to an exclusive residential project commissioned while he was the assistant architect to Kivas Tully, his predecessor, the former and esteemed chief architect for the province. Completed by 1892, the Lebec House is representative of late Victorian residential architecture in Toronto, skillfully combining elements of both the Richardsonian Romanesque and Queen Anne Revival styles. Characteristic of the Richardsonian Romanesque style is its large, impressive massing and strong masonry features, including the rusticated Credit Valley stone, rough cut to emphasize its texture, stone detailing, including flat stone lintels, stone banding, and the large segmental masonry arch of the recessed front entrance with short granite columns. Architectural elements and decorative detailing of the Queen Anne Revival style include the principal or south elevations, emphasis on verticality with its corner tower and two-story bay, and the double offset gables, the side porch featuring spindlework and now enclosed former conservatory, the use of brick, terracotta, stone, and wood, providing variation materiality, classicist architectural elements, and a complex roofline are also characteristic features of the style. Next slide, please. The stylistic character of the exterior of the house is reflected in the interior features of the long, wide entrance hall and stairways to the third story, which exhibit extensive and ornate architectural elements in wood, as well as stained glass windows at the second and third floor landings, and the stained glass of the foyer side lights and transom. Next slide, please. The property is physically, visually, and historically linked to its context in the Trinity Bellwoods neighborhood, where it sits on the north side of Halton Street, east of Ossington Avenue. Contemporaneous with the surrounding area, particularly Ossington Avenue from Dundas to Queen, the property contributes to a layer of built fabric reflecting the area's significant period of growth and urbanization in the late 19th century. It is historically linked to surrounding structures, including the commercial block at Ossington Avenue at Halton Street, listed on the city's Heritage Register, and the prominent corner commercial block known as the Lebec Block at 88 to 94 Ossington Avenue, designed by Francis R. Heeks for William Lebec. Moreover, as a late 19th century residential structure on the block, it joins nearby the John Ward House, constructed in 1883 to 84, as fine examples of late Victorian architectural styles. Next slide, please. Finally, prominently sited at the terminus of Gibbons Street at Halton Street, where in 1892 it replaced the nearly 100-year-old Pine Grove homestead of Colonel Gibbons, the property at 28 Halton Street has been a community landmark for over 100 years. For the reasons mentioned in this presentation and contained within the staff report from the Senior Manager of Heritage Planning, the property at 28 Halton is a significant built heritage resource, and staff recommend that City Council states its intention to designate the property under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. That was a great report.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed reading it. We have one speaker on this item, Matthew Lane.
Morning. Is
Matt,
my presentation,
I don't know. We'll make sure that you have access to do so. I was just going to remind you, you have 5 minutes to speak. And so can we have the clock up, please? Is that possible, Tanya?
Yes, Julia, give me one moment.
Thank you. I can do it myself, but it's nice when everybody can see it.
No,
And
for sure. I get that.
the end, I will gesture wildly to let you know that you need to cut yourself off before I do.
no problem. I shouldn't need the full 5 minutes. I'm not able to share my screen. I did submit the presentation if someone can just post. I really just am looking for the first page.
I will let clerks work on that for you. All right, you've got
Okay.
5 minutes.
Okay, perfect. Again, I echo your comments, and I want to thank staff for working with us. I just wanted to give a little bit of background. We've actually been working on this project for about 2 years. We've had several pre-application meetings with city planning, urban design, heritage, and they've been very collaborative. And I appreciate all the work the staff's put into this. We have come up with a plan that is before you here. We are going to be presenting this to the Committee of Adjustment in November. There are several minor variances required to put together the approval for this proposal. We will continue to work with staff through all the necessary steps. We are not new to the heritage process. We've done this with several applications, 197 King, our Junction project, so we're very familiar with the process. And again, I really just wanted to say thank you to staff for working with us. It's been great. The staff report was excellent. We love the building, obviously. We are going to be fully incorporating it and bringing it back to life. I'm actually really looking forward to removing a lot of that stuff in the front yard that in my opinion, is in the way as we do our new landscape plan and really make this again a prominent feature. It's a beautiful building, and we're really looking forward to it. So that's really all I wanted to say, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions of our speaker, with just the little caveat that the presentation and our report before us is about the designation? So while we're seeing lovely plans, we are talking today, like the matter before us is the designation of the property. So with that in mind, are there questions of our speaker? Adam.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. What do you mean by things in the front yard that are in the way?
So currently there's a very large ramp feature. So it's the home is used right now as a retirement home. And so for accessibility, there's a very large winding, I forget what you call it, but ramp, essentially. It's a concrete ramp with railings. I think it's called a switchback. But we'll be able to remove that in the future as part of the development, and then put in, I would say, better landscaping, which would allow for more visually appealing front yard, and again, giving prominence to the main building.
And just a brief question, not getting too much into the alterations here, but you're talking about lowering the soil down to create a, I guess, more accessible entrance. Because I note the stairs, or we get this into discussion ourselves, even for a question for staff. Just trying to get a sense of those comments took me aback for a moment, but thank you for that clarification.
Are there other questions?
Oh, sorry. And I'll just note, again, those items will be dealt with through site plan as well, which will need to be filed for this application. So we'll get into grading and landscape plan. We haven't really dug into all of those details yet,
Mhm.
but I appreciate the comment. And again, we look forward to working with staff on that. I know they'll be all over it. So, but our real intention here is to do what we can to sort of maintain the prominence of that building and really bring it back to life.
Thank you, Matthew. Are there other questions of our speaker? Seeing none, we'll move to questions of staff. Adam.
I have a few different questions. I'm going to try and go through them one at a time.
Please, we
And
like that.
some of these can be triaged to our discussion. I'm trying to figure out which one to start with. It's not going to immediately cause great difficulties, but the staff report notes the Victorian fence around the outside of the property. Is there a reason that's not included as an attribute? I know it is likely a cast fence from the period this was built. It's the lower fence. There's two fences outside the property. I would like to encourage that to be included as an attribute. It's the stone wall and then cast fence. You can see it on, let me just get the page number on the report. It's on page 28 of the report, figure 21.
Anna?
If I understand your question correctly, Adam, you're asking whether it's an attribute, the low stone wall and the iron fencing, the lower fence?
It's not currently listed on the list of attributes, is that correct?
No, it is. I believe
Oh.
it is.
I'm not finding it there, but maybe I'm just, let me double check that again.
On page 10, the first bullet point. Along the southern perimeter of the property, the lower
Oh, yes,
designated stone
my
wall and
apologies,
iron
thank you. Yes, I missed
Okay.
it there on the top of that page. Wonderful.
Okay.
Okay.
Other questions? Just sort of, I know you have a list, Adam, but I'm going
Yep.
to pause after each question to make sure that everybody's got an opportunity. Other questions for Anna? Okay, take it away. Next one, Adam.
Okay. Staff, could you speak a bit about the archaeological potential of this site? And I do have some information I'll leave to the discussion on our part, or I can mention it now if that will help contextualize it.
Why don't we just keep it as a question and then
Yep.
we'll take it from there.
Okay. Yep.
Well, this is a designation, so it doesn't include the archaeological work, so just to say, but happy to respond publicly to this. We have an archaeological management plan. We've had it in place since started in 2003, and it's been in place since 2006, 2007. And it takes a very detailed look at the historical development of the city, and particular attention was paid to the urban fabric. We also never assume that things are disturbed, because we certainly have found some of the most important property archaeological resources in the city below parking lots,
Mhm.
where people thought things were toasted. So we're very careful about this. And archaeological assessment work would be required within any application here for the designated property if there was considered to be potential. But I'm not prepared to speak to any application that's ongoing relative to archaeological work because that isn't before us right now. But I can tell you that we certainly will always ensure and err on the side of things not being disturbed. The management plan currently shows a lack of potential for this area, meaning it was reviewed by our archaeological specialists and determined that there was significant soil disturbance. And there is a tiny piece close by in a laneway that has potential. But as this is going to the Committee of Adjustment, we'll certainly make sure, I don't want to speak to the development application here, but it is a common practice to request an archaeological assessment. And that happens very early in the process.
Mhm. And thank you, Mary. I will provide a bit more detail during our discussion period in a few minutes as to my specific concerns.
Thank you. Other questions? We're pausing. We're all
Yep.
taking a breath.
Mhm.
Anybody else? Okay, back to Adam.
Okay. The interior attributes, I'm very grateful those are included. Could we, as staff members, speak to the process for getting these interior elements designated? I know there's been some discussion back and forth. It's been quite a popular topic in some of the heritage media articles about how so many designations are focused only on the exterior. How do we get these interior elements designated? I think it's absolutely wonderful that they're included.
Yeah, I don't, Anna, do you want me to take that? That's a
Sure.
sort of more general question related to intent overall, since the question seems to be more about a general practice. So we acknowledge that in a lot of cases, it is very complicated for people to retain interior features, and it's very difficult to regulate interior features. However, where there are properties where that emerges and where we think that there is a level of significance enough and integrity enough to include it, we will seek to do that. And we do that on a case-by-case basis for sure. Anna can speak to her process in particular for this project. But I think we have significant work to do to encourage people to retain the exteriors of buildings and as much as possible. And in our perfect world, the whole building is the thing. We're in this project in particular is just thrilling because the team is working with the building and working with the property and working with the interior, amazingly enough. And so we love these examples. But I think that it is always something we consider for interior features, but we consider it very, very, very carefully because the designation process is a delicate one, and we want to make sure that we get the best for the overall property. And it isn't always up to a level of significance in the interior, particularly given that there over time tends to be significant changes that happen. So, but Anna, do you want to speak to the your work on the interior in this case, since it is included?
Sure, I can take that question. Myself and my colleague Lindsay Parsons, who's a heritage planner, assistant heritage planner on the team, and the heritage consultants for the property owner, we conducted 2 site visits where we had permission to go into the interior of the house. We all agreed that the features were quite intact. So these are the public areas. It is right now a private nursing home. So the areas that we accessed were the public areas or publicly accessible areas, such as the hallway, the entrance, the hallway, and the stairs to the 3rd floor. All of these features were quite remarkably intact. We all 3 of us agreed that they held a certain level of significance and tied to the general overall style of the house. And that was basically our process. I conducted quite a bit of research looking at trade journals, newspaper articles at the time. There were a couple of articles in the 1980s that were written by an architectural historian who remarked on the interior features of the house. And although I couldn't find any reference to the interior in any of the original early documents. But that was general, that was the process that we took.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Are there other questions of staff? Seeing none, we're moving into discussion amongst ourselves. Anybody want to raise a point? Adam?
Regarding the archaeological potential, I want to acknowledge that designation is a report before us. I thank them for including the Pine Grove references. Pine Grove was a major site during the War of 1812. It served as the military hospital during the Battle of High Park. The Dundas Road, it's now Dundas Street West and Ossington Avenue, were defended with a 16-pound cannon. There's potential for War of 1812 related archaeology, I think, potentially on this site. I think, and this is based on conversations with some of the Lost Rivers people, when they built the Victorian home on the site, is it possible they just plopped it right where the earlier house was, it without too much land disturbance? It's a large garden around it. My concern is that there could be stuff under there, and as Mary said, some of the most significant archaeological sites in Toronto are underneath parking lots. It's not in the Garrison Creek ravine. There's also accounts in some of the early Toronto historical publications of there being an Indigenous settlement site in or near what is now Trinity Bellwoods Park that was dug up during an archaeological excavation in the 1930s. The exact location is not known, and all records have apparently been lost. But we do know that the Mississaugas held council at the bottom of Ossington Avenue, a short distance from this property, and that this site sits on Colonel Giffens, who was the then Indian agent for Upper Canada's residence. I just worry that if there is the potential for stuff being undisturbed under there, that there should be an archaeological assessment. So that was why I was asking those questions earlier.
Makes sense to me, and I'm heartened that, you know, before it proceeds, that it is one of the first things that has to be cleared, and as part of the process moving forward. So the hope is, you know, that due diligence approach continues, in my opinion. Are there other discussion points?
It's great to see an expansion for long-term care beds in the city.
Yes. Seeing none, we have a report with recommendations before us. Would anybody care to move the recommendations in the staff report? I will move them. Oh, Peter, thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Adam?
Yep, my hand's raised.
Oh, sorry, you've got some weird lighting there. It's
Oh, yep.
ghostly hand. All right, motion carries. Thank you ever so much. Moving on now to PB 23.2, 630 Spadina Avenue. We'll have a staff presentation. Would my fellow members care to hear it? Yes, all right. Patrick, welcome. The floor is yours.
Good morning.
This is Hans. Could I get permission to share?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Patrick Brown, Heritage Planner on the Policy and Research Team in Heritage Planning, and I will be presenting item PB 23.2, 630 Spadina Avenue, Notice of Intention to Designate a Property under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Next slide, please. The property at 630 Spadina Avenue, Knox Presbyterian Church, is located on the west side of Spadina Avenue, approximately 30 meters south of Harbord Street, at the eastern boundary of the Harbord Village neighborhood. The property contains a 1909 neo-Gothic style church with a 1907 Sunday school wing at the rear, a 1961 modernist style church hall known as the Fellowship Center, and a 1961 modernist style chapel. The 1961 Fellowship Center church hall is not considered a heritage attribute. Next slide, please. The property has been an active place of worship since 1907, which each of the three structures, the church, Sunday school, and chapel, having been designed and built for Knox Presbyterian Church. The church and Sunday school, designed by Toronto architect James Wilson Gray, features a neo-Gothic exterior and interior, while the church contains stained glass windows crafted by the firms of N.T. Lyon Company and Robert McCausland. The chapel, built 52 years later with the Fellowship Center, was designed by the significant architectural firm of John B. Park and Associates and features a unique design with atypical square plan, low-slung brick-clad walls, and curved roof. Next slide, please. Designed in the neo-Gothic style, the combined church and Sunday school has design value as a fine and representative example of an ecclesiastical building that displays a high degree of craftsmanship. Following the turn of the 20th century, the neo-Gothic style was popular for religious and educational buildings. With its monochromatic surfaces, overall balance, and less ostentatious medieval details, including sparse religious symbolism, the style differs from the more elaborate Gothic revival designs of the 19th century. This can be seen in the church's pointed arch fenestration, triple entrance portal, buttresses, bell tower, and restrained use of ornamentation found at the entrance portals, window hood molds, and corbels in the gables. The Sunday school at the west end of the church continues the neo-Gothic styling with its segmentally pointed arch windows, pointed arch entrances, and cross gables featuring lancet openings. Next slide, please. The sanctuary and vestibule are also representative of the neo-Gothic style, featuring pointed vault ceilings supported by quatrefoil columns with corbelled capitals, carved woodwork, and stained glass windows and tracery. Next slide, please. The church has value for its high degree of craftsmanship and artistic merit. While more restrained in its use of ornamentation than churches constructed in the Gothic Revival style, the high-quality rock-based limestone cladding, carved stone details, and principal east elevation, featuring large central tripartite step stained glass windows above triple entrance portals with ornamental gables, archivolts, and colonnettes, exhibit a high degree of craftsmanship. The high degree of craftsmanship extends to the interior, where Gothic elements are expressed through finely wrought plasterwork, carved woodwork, and stained glass. The interior of the Sunday school wing also features north and south staircases featuring finely carved woodwork with Gothic motifs. Next slide, please. The combined church and Sunday school pardon me, have value for their direct association with the Presbyterian Church in Canada, as the church is home to Toronto's oldest Presbyterian congregation. Established in 1820, it was originally known as the Presbyterian Church of York. In 1904, the church sold its original property on Queen Street between Yonge and Bay Streets to purchase the property at 630 Spadina Avenue, which was located closer to the residential areas where its congregants resided. The combined church and Sunday school is valued for its association with architect James Wilson Gray, who designed many prominent residential, institutional, and ecclesiastical buildings in Toronto during his nearly 4-decade career. Among these works were Heintzman Hall at 195 Yonge Street, St. Andrew's College in Rosedale, the Riverdale Presbyterian Church, and the Scottish Memorial Cairn and Monument in Mount Pleasant Cemetery. Gray was also responsible for designing the 1912 Confederation Life Building in Winnipeg, which is a National Historic Site. Completed in 1909, the church exemplifies Gray's restrained application of ornamentation in his revivalist designs. James Wilson Gray was also a prominent member of Knox Presbyterian Church where, during his lifetime, he was an active member of the congregation where he served as a church elder. A stained glass window honoring James Wilson Gray is located in the north transept of the church. Unveiled in 1922, it was crafted by Robert McCausland Limited. The church building is further valued for its association with the stained glass makers N.T. Lyant Company and Robert McCausland Limited, which produced the church's intricate stained glass windows. Both firms' works are widely regarded as among the finest in Canada, gracing historic landmarks throughout the country, including Canada's Parliament buildings, as well as Toronto's St. Michael's Cathedral Basilica, St. James Cathedral, and Old City Hall. Next slide, please. The chapel, located south of the main church building, has design value as a unique example of a modernist ecclesiastical building from the mid-20th century, distinguished by its small scale, atypical square plan, low-slung brick-clad walls, and curved roof. The adjacent exterior cross also has design value as part of John B. Park & Associates' design intent for the fellowship wing and chapel. The artistry of the cross is fully experienced when it is floodlit at night, projecting an enlarged image of the cross onto the intentionally blank wall of the fellowship wing. The chapel is valued for its direct association with Knox Presbyterian Church, which had the chapel constructed in 1961 as part of an expansion to accommodate programming associated with youth outreach. Since its construction in 1961, the chapel has also hosted and been used in the seating of new and emerging congregations throughout Toronto. The chapel is also valued for its association with the architectural firm of John B. Park & Associates, who designed the chapel. One of Canada's leading and most prolific modernist firms in the 1950s and 1960s, it contributed to the construction of many significant buildings in Toronto during this period. The chapel exemplifies the firm's work at this time, which was chiefly aligned with the international style modernism, with its square form, ribbon windows, and balance of vertical and horizontal lines. Next slide, please. Knox Presbyterian Church has value as a landmark on Spadina Avenue. Constructed in 1909, the church, with its grand scale and neo-Gothic architecture, stands out among the surrounding mix of late 19th century residences and modern institutional structures and high-rises. Knox Presbyterian Church also has value as a landmark for the Greater Toronto Area as an active place of worship serving Toronto's oldest Presbyterian community, which today serves members from throughout the Greater Toronto Area. In accordance with the official plan and the city's protocol for the identification and review of heritage places of worship, heritage planning staff met with Knox Church to seek their opinion on the heritage attributes of the property and which of these were to be identified as liturgical elements in the designation bylaw. Knox Church considers all interior spaces of the church, Sunday school, and chapel to be liturgical elements. Following research and evaluation, the property merits designations for its physical design, historical value, and contextual value. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have one speaker on this item, Tom Affleck.
Yes, hello, thank you.
You've got 5 minutes.
Absolutely. So Patrick, thank you for your report. And I'd just wanted to attend today on behalf of Knox Church to say that we are very encouraged with the designation of Knox Church building. We've enjoyed working with the staff around this. And we wanted to reinforce for the board that Knox Church has spent a great deal of time, energy, and money on maintaining and restoring our main church building. Since 2017, we've actually invested over $7 million on the restoration of the church building. That includes restoring our foundations, replacing large portions of our roof, renewing our sanctuary, and renewing our narthex and primary meeting room, as well as the Spadina entrance. We've done quite extensive work on our stained glass, and we've actually improved our commercial kitchen and done so in a way that is very sensitive to the historical stained glass in that space, as well as some of the arches. So we do very much value the historical significance of our building. In addition to this, we have an internal charter, actually, which governs any work that happens around the heritage features within and outside of our building, the interior and the exterior. And that really, the charter basically focuses on sort of the primary pieces being the repair and conservation of the heritage features rather than replacing those features, repairing and conserving heritage features using like materials, and a focus on regular maintenance and repair of our heritage features so that they don't degrade over time. So really what we wanted to do today was show up and say that we are very much in support of this designation, to thank staff for their work on it, and to make ourselves available for any questions that come up. And that's it from me.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for our speaker? Adam.
First off, thank you for supporting the designation of this church building. It's a wonderful site. Without going into too many, I'm just going to ask this bluntly: are there plans for this site? I remember seeing something about 10 years ago for a larger project, I think.
Yes, so thank you, Adam. There are plans in the works for the development of the site to the south of the site and to the north of the main church building. The main church building is to be retained in its entirety without interruption.
Thank you. And the site to the south is the Fellowship Center or St. Vlad's, and I think it's the two houses to the north, right?
Correct. Yeah. So the site to the south is the Fellowship Center, exactly, which as as Patrick mentioned, is not a candidate for designation.
Thank you. And the two houses, or the church houses, right on the corner?
There
And
is
the
a
parking
building
lot?
on the corner and the parking lot,
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions of our speaker? Seeing none, thank you so much for your time today, Tom.
Well, thank you, appreciate it.
Now we move on to questions of staff. Hello again, Patrick.
Hello.
Adam, I know you have a question.
Yep.
Does anybody else have a question? Okay, go for it, Adam.
Thank you. When these properties, when the church property was listed in 2006, it was listed as part of 3 properties altogether, the other 2 being the 2 houses, 644, 646 Spadina Avenue. These were originally all part of the Harvard Village Phase 1 HCD study and were severed from that study apparently at the request of the property owner. Could you speak as to why 644 or 644 and 646 are not being designated at this time?
I
Or
can
were-
answer that.
yeah.
It's Tamara Anson-Cartwright, the program manager. We've been focusing our efforts as an active place of worship for the Knox Church, and that's really the material that we're bringing forward to you today. It's a separate property and 630 Spadina. So we have no comment on the related or the adjacent properties for you this morning.
Thank you.
Hold on.
Okay. Yep.
Pausing because we're just, are there other questions of staff? Okay, Adam?
I'm not sure if there's going to be a question of staff. Let's see. If we do the discussion amongst ourselves, there's a procedural element I'm trying to work around here.
So then do you think it's discussion point? If there's no question mark.
There is a question. I just don't want to get in too much trouble here, but okay. Seeing as these the listing reports were all linked together and have been linked together for 18 years at this point, procedurally, is there a way to request a motion to have those evaluated for designation and strongly encourage their designation? Or does it be a new agenda item, or maybe the clerks can chime in at the chair's discretion? I'm just trying to get a sense here how to go through this, and I want to acknowledge trying to work through best practices and things here to make sure it runs smoothly for everyone.
Julia, do you want, I know we've had some procedural discussion about this, so.
Yes. Would you like to speak to procedure, or should Tanya speak to procedure here?
Well, the part 1 is, yes, it's never appropriate to attach motions to existing designations for addresses, even if they're next door, even if they have been listed at the same time. That's, the designation is for this particular address and property. So adding other properties to this would not be appropriate. And so I guess the question is there a venue to request the evaluation? And that would be something that could be made to the senior manager. I mean, I appreciate the board's desire in some cases to put lots of things on the record, but I'm always happy to have these conversations in advance of the meeting. Me personally, I can have those conversations so we can, kind of get together on some of these issues more effectively, working together on the issues, I think. But in this case, it would have to be a new item. And so I think, Adam, you would request that be done. And then the chair would have an opinion about whether or not it should be added to the agenda at this time. It's at the pleasure of the chair. So staff are populating your agendas with our reports, but the meeting is really Julia's. She gets to make the decisions. I'm just providing advice.
Thank you, Mary.
Are there other questions of staff at this time? Seeing none. Oh, yeah, Adam, is that a question of staff?
Yes, and thank you for those comments, Mary. We can move to the discussion point. Yeah.
Can I add one more thing
Yep,
that might
yep.
give you some comfort?
Yep.
Which is we evaluate all listed properties that
Yep.
are coming forward for development. So, you know, and as you've discussed through your questions with the owner, there's stuff swirling around. And so as a matter of practice, always, as triggered through prescribed events now and our usual process, which we didn't need a prescribed event for, that just makes it more time sensitive, but we always
Mhm.
seek conservation. ROP currently says that we should. New Planning Act or new bills have made that more complex. But anything active happening on any listed property, we're part of anything. So to the extent that it's necessary to request us to evaluate, I don't believe it's necessary. But that's for you to consider also.
Thank you very much, Mary. Are there other questions of staff? Seeing none, thank you, Patrick. That was a great report. Like, just so very nicely done. Thank you. Now discussion amongst ourselves. Who would like to start things off? Adam?
You know, I'd like to ask if any of the fellow members have anything they'd like to raise first before I delve into this.
Yes, Jeff.
I would simply make a comment that this issue of adjacent properties has come up several times from a community perspective, because individuals, residents, look at their street or their neighborhood in a contextual way. They don't just look at it as one property, and so it's understandable that. But clearly, as expressed by Mary, the determination of stuff's coming on the agenda is on a site-by-site basis, and there isn't that context. There doesn't appear to be that contextual element. So I would simply make that as a comment. Maybe this is something that can be looked at in the upcoming item on the agenda around the listing registry, and how to do a better job in terms of context and not just individual properties.
Thank you. Other points of discussion? Okay, Adam?
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Jeff. Linking to Jeff's comment, absolutely, the contextual value there. I'd like to request consideration for a new agenda item for an evaluation of 644-646 Spadina. That corner property next to the church, like I said, the listing reports were linked together for 18 years. The report lists it's all together in that it was originally part of the Heritage Conservation District study that was all designated in 2006 and was severed at the request of the owner in 2006. It's a part of an architectural typology in the Bloor Spadina precinct of home physician offices. I think there's multiple criteria with that corner building that Heritage Planning could look at. It's currently, the peeling paint, unfortunately, may impact public perception of it, but I think that building has a number of heritage-related values that should be considered. And I'm also, within the statutory timelines, a bit concerned about, there is an application from 2018 for this site. And I worry if a request is not made to evaluate this, just procedurally, if there's a way that it might slip through the cracks that we've seen with some other buildings, like the church on Danforth Avenue. But I'd like to, Madam Chair, request that potentially we have a new agenda item requesting evaluation of 644-646 Spadina.
So, Adam, you can put that motion, and we can determine it at that point, and I will make a determination whether I rule it out of order or not. I would say to this point of discussion, we all know what's coming for this site, right? Which means that there's going to be a prescribed event, which means that they're going to have to evaluate the properties. So we know that in this case, it actually does have to happen, and they're going to have to take in the context of the street. So my opinion is that, that I think it's going to happen. And in this case, I have faith that it's going to happen, because sometimes we need to put our faith that planning staff and heritage planning staff want to protect the heritage in the city. It is their job. And I think at that point, that context, because it is a large site. But Adam, you know, I know that you feel strongly, and so if you want to have that, then it's part of our discussion and part of the public record as it goes. So I leave that to you if you want to move forward, or if you'd like to, at this point, have a little faith.
I would like to have it as part of the public record and request a motion. I have a concern I share with Jeff that sometimes, or maybe it could even be the clerks on the wording, but maybe even report back to Preservation Board about this, because there are times, as Jeff has said, that listed properties as part of a broader site aren't designated, and we don't get updated on it.
No, that is your prerogative. So you need to work with staff.
Yeah.
I will at this point table this item so that we can return to it, so that you can develop the wording that you see fit. And at that point, we will make I'll make a determination. Okay.
Thank you, and I want to reiterate I have a huge deal of respect for staff and my fellow board members. I just also worry when things sometimes fall through the cracks or we're left with
No,
unanswered questions. Yeah.
Appreciate that. We all come and we all bring our backgrounds and our perspectives, and that's what we're here to do and discuss. So I will leave it to you and clerks. I will table this item for the moment, and hopefully we can do this in a rather timely manner. Thank you. And we're going to move on then to PB 23.3, 40 to 44 Mitchell Avenue, demolition of heritage buildings. We have a staff report from Erin. Welcome, Erin. Floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Erin Smith with Heritage Planning Development Review. I'm presenting PB item 23.3, 40 to 44 Mitchell Avenue, demolition of designated heritage properties under Section 34 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Next slide, please. The slide shows the subject properties at 40 to 44 Mitchell Avenue outlined in red. They're located on south of Queen Street West between Tecumseth and Niagara Streets. You'll also see on this slide there are 5 others outlined in blue, and these are the other last remaining Robinson Garrison cottages. Next slide, please. Here's a photograph of 40 to 44 Mitchell Avenue, which are proposed to be demolished for the construction of 2 new 3-story residences. This demolition application under the Ontario Heritage Act is associated with Committee of Adjustment applications for the proposal and are currently under appeal to the Toronto Local Appeal Body, or the TLAB. These are a pair of rare early surviving examples of this worker cottages typology in Toronto. Among the very first residential buildings constructed in the area, they are important reminders of the Niagara Street neighborhood, where they define, support, and maintain the historical character. The semi-detached houses feature near square plans, low-hipped roofs, and symmetrical placement of their door and window openings, inspired by the bungalow that originated in India, which later influenced the early 19th century Regency cottage, and on a more modest scale, the vernacular workers' cottage. They are one of the last remaining pairs of the original 16 pairs of workers' cottages that are collectively known as the Robinson Garrison cottages, and they date back to 1858. Property is designated under the Ontario Heritage Act. Next slide, please. This is a closer image of 44 Mitchell Avenue. You'll see that both properties have undergone alterations since their construction in 1858. The designation bylaw that was passed by council took into consideration and acknowledged these alterations. For example, the bylaw notes that the window openings at this property have been altered. Next slide, please. And here's a closer look at 40 Mitchell Avenue. Again, the designation bylaw notes here that the brick cladding has been covered, and you'll also note that a porch extension has been added. Next slide, please. This slide shows the new residences that are proposed to replace the designated heritage buildings. As I noted, this is in relation to Committee of Adjustment applications that are under appeal. The application proposes to demolish the designated heritage buildings completely, resulting in the irreversible loss of their cultural heritage values and heritage attributes that are listed in the designation bylaw. Next slide, please. Shown here for the board's reference are 2 others of the last remaining Robinson Garrison cottages at 705 and 721 Richmond Street West, which were cited in the application's heritage impact assessment as being examples of where Garrison Robinson cottages have been successfully rehabilitated. Next slide, please. This is our last slide. None of the technical reports that have been submitted with the heritage permit application demonstrate that these significant heritage buildings cannot be meaningfully conserved and or rehabilitated. The proposed demolition of protected heritage properties is contrary to the intent of the official plan, as well as the council adopted standards and guidelines for the conservation of historic places. So staff are strongly recommending that council refuse the application to demolish these designated heritage buildings. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Erin. We have Chris Uchiyama here to speak with us. Hi, Chris, welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning. So my name is Chris Uchiyama. I'm a principal and manager of Heritage Consulting Services at LHC Heritage Planning and Archaeology. And I'd like to extend my appreciation to staff and to the board for the significant time and consideration that's gone into the review of the submitted materials, and for the thoughtfulness of the comments that were outlined in the staff report and their detailed presentation. I won't take much more of your time, but I am available to receive input from the board and also happy to answer any questions on the Heritage Impact Assessment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for our speaker? Can't see you. Hi, Adam. Go for it.
Yes, thank you. Do we have a copy of that Heritage Impact Assessment? Is it?
It would have been filed. I'm going to just pipe in because it would be under the Development Application Center. So
oh yes, I'm going on there right now.
Okay. While you do so, are there other questions for our speaker? Jeff.
I would simply make the comment I'm unclear what the speaker is presenting. She spoke of a heritage impact assessment we have not seen, and who was her client. There's really no information here.
Chris?
So LHC was retained by the owners of the property to prepare the heritage impact assessment as part of the applications that are ongoing. So the staff report referenced the committee of adjustment applications that are in, as well as specifically the demolition application, which was sort of part of that. It's been coordinated as part of that application.
Hi, I'm on that site right now. There is no heritage impact assessment as part of this application. It's the committee of adjustment file.
Well, then I think we need to pause for a moment because that might be a question then to ask of staff. But if there's an HIA, it was referenced within our reporting, you know, because it did reference an LHC HIA within our materials that we had last week. Are there other questions of Chris? Yes, Jeff.
I'm still unclear what this heritage assessment is in fact recommending. Is it recommending demolition? Is it recommending retention? We have no information.
Chris, are you able to speak to that?
I can provide a very high-level summary. So we did review the demolition. We did identify that demolition of the cottages would result in an adverse impact and loss of the cultural heritage value. We did recommend mitigation measures, including documentation to help mitigate the loss of those. But as part of the review, we did look at so the nearby examples that staff presented in their report and in their presentation today. So we did look at those as alternatives, and the owner did review those as alternatives. But as noted in the staff report, the scope of the exterior and the interior work that was required for those the nearby rehabilitation projects on Richmond was very extensive, including the reversal of a number of unsympathetic alterations, and then the scope of these properties based on their current conditions. You know, our discussions with the owners that their review of the alternatives has identified that rehabilitation isn't viable in their context, their current context.
Thank you. Other questions of Chris? Adam.
Can you please elaborate on why it's not viable? And I want to reiterate, it is extremely difficult to understand this file without seeing this reference document. And I understand that 40 and 44 Mitchell have been a point of heritage-related activism since at least 2017 with the Save the Garrison Commons project. It's a very long-standing project, and without delving too much to the privacy concerns, if this is a recent acquisition of your clients, I'll raise this in the discussion point among ourselves. I was just more curious about what you mean by the irreversible, or the, if you could elaborate that, please, with the understanding we don't have this document in front of us.
Yeah, and I apologize for that. It was my understanding that that would be part of the package, and you would have had the opportunity to review the heritage impact assessment, the structural condition assessment, and the other materials that were submitted. So there have been some fairly significant interventions to both of these buildings, including a fairly significant basement addition that has resulted in some interesting issues around the foundation. So there is a structural condition assessment that was done by Tacoma Engineering that was included. It certainly would be extensive to reverse and to repair a number of the issues. There's not imminent structural failure or anything along those lines, as noted in staff's report. But the scope of work that would be required would be quite extensive. Anything is possible, but within the realm of what they're looking at as viable and financially feasible, it was outside of the realm of what they felt was possible. With respect to I can speak just a bit to the history of the Save Our Garrison cottages based on the demolitions of, I believe it was 18 to 22, Mitchell, back in 2017. So the ownership and the work that's been going on with this application extends back to around that same time. So it's not something that was necessarily known at the time of the acquisition by the owner. I can speak to that.
Thank you very much. Other questions of our speaker? Seeing none, thank you very much for your time today, Chris. We're going to move into questions of staff. Adam.
I intend this question with respect, but if we have, how do we go about this procedurally? We don't have this supporting documentation as part of this file. I see it's a committee of adjustment file. I am trying to get an understanding here of, and also with Jeff's comments, what exactly is the report before us? If you please just reiterate that. What are we voting on?
Erin, would you like to take this?
Sure.
And
Yeah, sure.
There is a larger context that Erin can explain as well.
Sure. Through the chair, the board today is considering the demolition application under the Ontario Heritage Act to demolish the buildings. There is a separate committee of adjustment application that did not include a heritage impact assessment that was considered by the committee of adjustment and is currently under appeal. So what's before you today is the demolition application under the Ontario Heritage Act. And that application is what included the heritage impact assessment and other materials that were referenced within staff's report.
Other questions?
Oh,
Other questions of staff?
Erin, is the committee of adjustment file that has the heritage impact assessment, or?
Through the chair, no, the committee of adjustment application did not include the HIA.
Okay.
That's why you're not seeing that on the application
Okay.
information center. Staff receive and the city receives heritage permit applications separately. And so that was filed with the city separately.
Jeff, you have a question?
I'm just trying to understand the chronology here. It sounds like the committee of adjustment application was refused on the basis of, I don't know, was it refused on the basis of a report from Heritage? You know, that it was not in line with the Ontario Heritage Act. And then that's been appealed to the Toronto Local Appeal Body, and at that point, the owner hired a consultant to write them a report, which an heritage impact assessment, which is saying that it's too costly, and it therefore should be allowed to be demolished. Is that the scenario that we're looking at here? And that report would be on the files, that HIA would be on the files of the TLAB, not on the files of Committee of Adjustment, therefore.
No, slightly different. Jeff, the So I'm not aware of the reasons why. Aaron might be able to say why the Committee of Adjustment refused the application, but it obviously did contemplate the demolition of a designated heritage property. And so once the refusal happened, it was appealed to TLAB. TLAB understood that there was a central heritage issue, that the development couldn't proceed without the heritage issue being resolved. So that item has been deferred pending consideration of the heritage permit application to demolish. So there was never an HIA at the C of A or as a part of any TLAB submission. It is a requirement of our application for a heritage permit. So we do have that on file. We do not yet have an online interface to our heritage permit process because it's very new and we're just, been kind of rolling all of that out. Someday, I hope the materials will be accessible once they are public. We are happy to supply it, but I can tell you that we have reviewed it very carefully and our refusal is based on our professional opinion that it is possible to retain this building and to rehabilitate it and also to intensify the site. And we have examples of that in the neighborhood. So while I absolutely appreciate the desire for detail, given that we are heading to a tribunal, I would hope that the professional advice of staff at this point that we will need to defend is considered sufficient without the board questioning whether or not our conclusion is appropriate. I leave that to you to consider.
Thank you, Mary. Are there other questions of staff? Yes,
Madam
Adam.
Chair, thank you, Mary. And I just want to stress I was not, or the concerns I think were directed at a presentation that was unclear from the applicant rather than staff.
Okay. Jeff.
Yes, I would also like to ask what is the legal situation if this board denies the, recommends to council? Does that bind then the TLAB in its decision making?
Aaron?
Through the chair. So the board would make its recommendation to council, and if council were to accept staff's recommendation to refuse the application, the owner would be enabled to appeal that decision. And so because those decisions go to the Ontario Land Tribunal, they don't go to the TLAB. What would happen, what we've been advised by our legal staff, is that the Committee of Adjustment application and the Ontario Heritage Act application would be heard together at the Ontario Land Tribunal.
Thank you, Aaron. Other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Discussion amongst ourselves. Do we have any? My goodness, none. We have.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
My apologies, Madam Chair. I just saw a response back from the clerks regarding the last item at the same time, and there's multiple screens going. I just want to say these cottages are so important to the history of Toronto. These are, Regency era cottages. We don't have too many of them left. It's a significant site. They are designated, and I think it's staff's opinion here is correct. This is something that could be preserved. So,
thank you. Other comments or discussion points? Seeing none, we have a staff report with recommendations before us. Would anybody care to move the recommendations in that report? I will. All those in favor? Perfect. The motion carries. Thank you very much. We are going to move on, I think, because I don't think we're quite ready to go back yet, to PB 23.4. And I think it's Paul. Are we welcoming you to the floor? You're the next contestant.
Yes, thank you. With my colleague Adrian.
Perfect. Welcome, Paul. Welcome, Adrian. It's all yours.
Just wait for the presentation. There we go. So through you, Chair, good morning. My name is Paul Macca, and I'm the project manager and heritage registrar currently working on Bill 23 implementation. With me today again is my colleague Adrian Gamble, who's also working with me full-time on Bill 23 implementation. Thank you for providing us with some time to speak with you about this morning. Slider. All right, sorry, Helens. So the purpose of this presentation is to update you on the city's ongoing work to implement the Bill 23 amendments to the Heritage Act. And at the same time, we'll also provide you with a brief update on the Bill 200 amendments to the Act. Through this presentation, we'll provide you with an overview of an information report that's the subject that'll be before, I should say, the Planning and Housing Committee from the Chief Planner at their October 30th meeting, so later this month. Slide, please. So we last updated this board on Bill 23 implementation back on March 28th. At that time, we reminded the board that the city had taken a phased approach to Bill 23 implementation. Phase 1 was geared towards ensuring that the city could continue to conserve its heritage properties that were going through the development process. And then phase 2, our current phase, is geared towards addressing the properties that are included on the Heritage Register but not designated, so listed properties. When we updated you in March, the interim chief planner was about to update planning and housing on Bill 23. That update didn't happen, and this was in large part because of Bill 200, the Homeowner Protection Act 2024. This was a bill that was tabled on May 27th and came into force almost immediately afterwards on June 6th. And let's give you a quick update on that bill. So that act amended several provincial acts, including the Heritage Act. The most significant amendment to the Ontario Heritage Act was that it extended the deadline for removing the listed properties that were on the register as of January 1st, 2023, from January 1st, 2025 to January 1st, 2027. So we've given a 2-year extension. So that means we have 2 additional years now to review the legacy listed properties. So in light of Bill 200, staff paused preparing the update report to Planning and Housing Committee while we considered the implications of the Act or the amendments. I will say, though, that while we paused work on the report, work on the implementation did not continue. And this work has continued over the summer and up until this point. So at this point, I'm going to turn you over in the presentation to my colleague, Adrian. And Adrian's going to walk you through the prioritization work that that's been taking place since our last update in March. And then he'll hand the presentation back to me and we'll talk about some next steps. So slide, please.
All right. Hello. Thanks, Paul. As stated, I'm Adrian Gamble, Heritage Planner working on this project. So when we last met, we walked you through the prioritization principles that we had developed through our engagement sessions with our consulting team, ASI Heritage. As a reminder, the principles are listed here on the slide. The 5 prioritization principles are to apply a data-informed approach, to leverage city planning work in progress, to focus on areas with high rates of change to support land use planning, to strive to build a more representative register, and to consider listed properties with outstanding cultural heritage value and integrity. Next slide, please. Over the summer, we began to apply these principles to the listed properties through a series of quantitative and qualitative analysis exercises, starting with the quantitative analysis framework, which considered the findings of purpose-made development potential model, and gap analysis review. We categorized the listed properties into 3 broad categories of priority rank. Next slide, please. So high priority, scheduled for evaluation between 2025 and 2026. High priority properties and or those shortlisted for designation are located within areas experiencing growth and where, through the development model, that prescribed events will occur. These properties will be situated along major streets within P or MTSAs or within specified OP areas targeted for growth. We anticipate recommending properties for designation from this set because of the high likelihood of prescribed events. Further, Council is prohibited from designating a property unless it is already listed on the Heritage Register. Next slide, please. So moving on to the qualitative analysis following the quantitative. The shortlisted properties will be subjected to a qualitative analysis, which will rely upon known cultural heritage indicators, including date of construction, architect, typology, and potential for groupings, i.e. physical, historical, contextual, or otherwise. This staff-led analysis will be completed in conjunction with a desktop integrity review, which will result in the selection of 200 to 250 priority properties for immediate action. The 200 to 250 priority properties will be recommended for designation and will be subject to future reporting to Council. Next slide, please. The next ranked group would be the medium priority properties. So medium priority properties are eligible for designation, but are not located within an area where the city is anticipating prescribed events through the development potential model. Most of these properties will not be situated, for example, along a major street, within a transit area, a PMTSA, or within specified OP areas targeted for growth. Next slide, please. The last category, scheduled for beyond 2027, so therefore beyond the deemed removal date of from the new rules. The low priority properties include those that are not eligible for municipal designation because they are owned by government entities exempt from application of the OHA. Further, 329 listed properties within heritage conservation districts were designated in 2024, and 223 additional listed properties within HCDs are anticipated to be designated prior to 2027. So in that case, these would also be considered as low priority because they'll be picked up in another way. Next slide, please. So formally listed but not designated properties. So what happens to those? The city does not have the resources to research, evaluate, and designate all of the listed properties deemed worthy of designation prior to January 1st, 2027. Instead, we are proposing that the properties selected for priority designation be those deemed most likely to see a prescribed event, since this is the only scenario where council is prohibited from designating a formally listed property. Through our engagement process, we heard that there is a desire for the city to create a publicly accessible list of formally listed properties. As you will recall, this was a motion passed by the board when we last met in March 2024. Our strategy is to develop an inventory of formally listed properties which will continue to be monitored moving beyond 2027. This inventory will continue the city's long-standing practice of recognizing properties that are believed to hold cultural heritage value, to foster civic identity and pride, and provide transparency to owners and the development industry. Next slide, please. OPA 720. As part of our ongoing monitoring strategy in May of 2024, Council adopted OPA 720 and prescribed new application requirements under Schedule 3 of the City of Toronto's official plan. The OPA included a requirement for the submission of a Cultural Heritage Evaluation Report, or a SHARE, for certain planning applications when the application includes a property that has been identified by City Council through a city-led study as having potential cultural heritage value or interest, but which is not included in the Heritage Register. Prior to Bill 23, the city had been listing some properties that fall within this category. The application includes a property that has been previously identified by City Council as having heritage value or interest and requires further valuation, but which is not included on the Heritage Register. Formally listed properties on an online register would fall within this category and would be subject to the SHARE requirement. This will allow for an assessment of cultural heritage value as part of the public planning process. I will now hand the presentation back to Paul, who will close with next steps for the project.
Next slide, Hans. Thank you. So thank you, Adrian. I'll briefly walk you through the immediate and longer term steps on this project. So as I mentioned at the outset, there will be a report to the Planning and Housing Committee at their next meeting. So that's the October 30th meeting of Planning and Housing. This will be an information report that'll be responding to the council request for an information report last year. So it'll include some of the information that we've presented to you today, which is what's happened since our last update to this board in March. It'll also include additional background information that you heard at our March presentation. Following that, staff are also working, I should say at the same time, staff are also working to develop what will become the inventory of formerly listed properties so that we will have an accessible public presence when needed, along with a strategy to continue to look at these properties as time goes on. And then shortly we'll be starting our quantitative review that Adrian outlined for you of the high priority properties. And coming out of that, you'll begin to see designation reports coming to this board. The first we're anticipating will be piloted to the board at the next meeting. Much later, you can expect a report on properties that are deemed to be removed from the register. And finally, I will say that this work continues to happen in conjunction with our regular REP program. So that includes the Toronto Heritage Survey program, designations supporting the development or land use planning, I should say, which you are seeing through this board, and of course the Heritage Conservation District program, which has been designating significant numbers of listed properties throughout this process. So next slide, please. Once again, thank you again for providing us with the opportunity to update you on this work. We're going to keep the board updated on this work as the project continues. So thanks.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you very much, Adrian. This is a huge project, and I know you have consultants, but just, you know, bravo, gentlemen. Like, thank you very much for all of your work. But we're going to open the floor to questions now. Are there questions of staff on this report? Paul.
Thank you, Julia. We know you guys have been doing an awful lot of work on this, and it's much appreciated. When we there've really been two phases to this whole effort. One is trying to figure out what to do, and then the second phase is getting on with it. And I have to say, you know, speaking for at least for the Etobicoke panel, we always you know, wanted to just jump in and dive in and get going on research and designation reports. But I think you've done some really useful work in doing the preparation, because the properties that we might have jumped in on maybe aren't the ones that, when you look at the prioritization criteria, that we should have put first. So I think it was worth taking that time to do the planning. And I'm rambling, there's a question coming, trust me. But I think the general reaction and the overweight, you know, overwhelming reaction that people have, the angst, is just there's only so much runway left, even with 2027 giving us a bit of space. At some point, we really need to start churning out designation reports. And the prioritization exercise may have pointed to some no-brainers where we know we want to get at some of these properties in a hurry and get them designated. So my question that I'm finally getting to is just, I'm looking for some confidence that we haven't been wasting time, that's a poor way of putting it, but that resources haven't been sitting idle that could have been doing designation reports because we were busy working out process. And what can you give us as confidence that we're now moving as quickly as we need to move, so that we get to 2027 with as much accomplished as we can possibly achieve?
Thank you, Paul. Over to staff.
So thank you for that question. Through you, Chair. So thank you for the support, Paul. I think you're absolutely right. As we've done this assessment, done this evaluation, done this prioritization work, we have seen that perhaps some of the properties we would have anticipated going after first have not really been the ones that we should be going after first. So through this work, we have been able to categorize these properties into these 3 categories, and I think it makes absolute sense going after them in different ways. So finding those ones that are priority properties, that work has been really important to us, and we've been testing that over the summer and applying the development pipeline work that we've undertaken has been, I think, a very important part of this project. In terms of designations, you will see designations. Like I said, I anticipate you'll be seeing some designations at the next meeting, and then designations will be continuing throughout next year. So that work is coming. We have been working all hands on this project, and we'll be bringing in additional resources as well as part of the designation work that's happening next year.
Thank you, Paul. I have a speak. Alex, you had your hand up too, and I have Jeff on. I've got a list now. So Alex and then Jeff.
Yes, okay. Perhaps I was under a misconception, but I think I and certain other people were under the idea that there was going to be consultation once the initial pass through the properties had been done, and that would mean the preservation panels would get their chance to go over the list as developed at the interim stage, as would organizations such as historical societies. I don't see any evidence of consultation being mentioned today. What's happened? Or was I under the wrong impression?
Thanks for that question, Alex. When we originally structured the project, we structured the engagement portion of the project at the front end when we were doing the prioritization principle work. Part of that was because we didn't have particularly long to get through this project. We were looking at a deadline at the end of the year. So we didn't have engagement scheduled for this part of the project. But that said, we do have more time now, and we are going through the qualitative analysis exercise. So we certainly can, and we're intending to reach out to the panels as part of the qualitative analysis exercise whenever we have questions, and to get feedback on those properties that we're looking at as part of that exercise. So that'll come as part of the next steps, Alex, that we're just moving into now. So we've got those 1,000 or so properties that are in the high development areas, and we can certainly have conversations about those with the panels.
Okay, thank you. And are you planning to produce sort of a list, a preliminary list, which will be circulated to panels and other interested organizations, so we can have a look? We were sort of expecting that as a starting point for, our feedback.
Madam Chair, oh, sorry.
No, Adam.
Yep.
Alex is asking a question. I've put you on.
It's a supplementary comment supporting his question.
I appreciate that, but it's Alex's turn.
Yep, thank you.
Did my question make sense, Paul?
It does make sense, Alex, and through your chair. Thank you, Alex. We don't anticipate releasing a full list of properties for the prioritization. We'll come to the panels and we'll talk about those properties that are in those areas in high development, and that'll be the conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Jeff, you are next on the list.
Yes, I appreciate the presentation and the questions by board members. I'm wondering, I have several questions, but there's certain language that's included in the slides was like development potential model, the intent for a more representative register, this kind of thing. Are you anywhere, where is this actually provided the detail around some of these concepts? Where is this involves mapping and so on. We're not we have not received any of this information. We've had a presentation with but no elaboration on that presentation. I'm wondering, for example, will Planning and Housing Committee be having a more complete exposure to to this, or are they simply getting a presentation as well? I think there's a sense in which people, there was sort of a sense in which, as Alex said, there was an invitation for residents to get involved, and that now seems to be evaporating. So will there be much more information provided at Planning and Housing Committee?
Paul, do you mind if I chime in just for a second? First of all, the participation is not evaporating. Just to be really clear, some of, if this is a fundamental part of the next couple of years of our work, is finding the ways to skinny up and focus the lists. So, of course, there will be a number of factors taken into account, existing nominations, meeting with the panel, lists. It's very, I think, crowdsourcing this beyond the panels is very unwieldy. And given that you are appointed representatives of the city, probably the best way to go given our time considerations. But we can also talk about that later if there are representative groups that might be invited to your panel meeting when we're there, we can facilitate that as well. So there are ways to do this. It is an information report going to Planning and Housing, which means there are no recommendations. There will be no discussion. It's just there. There is a lot of detail there. So, and the agenda will be released shortly. So you will have an opportunity. Our idea here was to orient the board to where we are, to give you an update, to answer your questions, but not to move through all the moments that have happened over the past year. Having said that, the information report that you can read on the Planning and Housing agenda provides all of that. And we're working phase by phase. So now we've gotten to the quantitative stage. Now we're moving into the qualitative stage. And that is where the picking and choosing happens. And it is definitely our intention to ensure within this process that if the prioritized properties include properties of interest to the panel, that will be taken very seriously, and we will have discussions about that. But we do not have time to run wholesale, citywide meetings on these issues, or even to have focused meetings with individual organizations, as important as those voices are. But again, as I said, we can figure out ways to do that. We are trying to keep a certain horizon in place. So now we are here. So now we will be moving forward on the next phase of it. And so our next steps are not fully realized as we've been working hard to get here. But the community is the most important thing to this exercise, given that we have limited resources to do it. And there were a couple of what we call low-hanging fruit, which are items that have already been identified by panels, items that meet the criteria and that we feel really good and should be moving forward on, that you will see. But that isn't the beginning of massive. You're not going to have massive agendas in January with designations that you haven't heard about. There'll be a couple coming forward before the end of the year that are notionally involved in this, because they have been chosen without a development application involved. But you will be aware of those properties at the panel level. And I can tell you we already know they'll be supported. So
Thank you.
That's a teaser.
Thank you. Adam, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. And my apologies, my internet connection is not very good. I didn't mean to speak over Alex there. I just want to again support Alex's comments with the other comments here. Our panel is willing to liaise with the community groups, but the big issue we have with the community groups is, some of them say there's nothing formally from the city in terms of how this will be used or what it will be used for. I'm wondering if you might be able to get a copy of this presentation to share with them, because we have at least 20 to 30 volunteers with various groups across the city who are willing to devote time to research listed properties and put together high-level research. The Harvard Village group has put together some wonderful research on the College Street listed properties, but other groups have expressed concerns that there is not any guidelines about what they need. And I know we have that listed property report now, but anything the city, even a letter that they can put together, advising of this update would be hugely helpful.
Through you, Chair, thank you for the question, Adam. Certainly the presentation will be posted on the internet as soon as the clerk gets it up. We can then send it to the panel. We'll also post it on the Bill 23 implementation Heritage Register review section on our website as well. So it'll be posted in multiple places, and we can certainly have conversations. Look forward to having conversations about ongoing research in the community, the listed research record program that we launched a few months back. We certainly have those conversations going forward, and I'm look forward to that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions? Seeing none, we've had a report and an update before us, so I need a motion to receive it, please. From Jeff, thank you very much. All those in favor? Beautiful, motion carries. We're going to move on to PB 23.5, the panel minutes. So those are before us, and so we have an opportunity now to, Adam, you had a question to raise. There's no presentation sort of associated with these, but we have the opportunity for discussion and questions. So, Adam?
Oh, this is just very brief. I want to acknowledge that the point number one, I think it's motion S241002. Our panel shares similar concerns with certain files, and I've heard from at least representatives of the 3 of the 4 panels that this is an ongoing concern, and we look forward to having a dialogue with Heritage Planning around it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a point of discussion. Any other discussion on the minutes? Yes, Matthew.
Yeah, I'll just throw in that I've been talking with Gary Miedema over the Scarborough panel's issue on this, and so we're in the middle of discussions on that. So I just wanted to throw it out there that there's been some back and forth discussion there.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Any other points of discussion? Seeing none, can I have a motion to receive the panel minutes? From Matthew, thank you. All those in favor? Motion carries. So we're moving back to PB 23.2, and Adam has a motion to table.
Oh, clerks, should we get that up on the screen, please?
That the Toronto Preservation Board requests the Senior Manager Heritage Planning to consider conducting an evaluation of 644, 646 Spadina Avenue for the purposes of designating it a heritage property under Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act.
My apology, I think, oh, Madam Chair, my apology. I thought we had to have a new item, and I see this is under the existing item. Is there a procedural issue? I want to flag that before we go too far in this.
Sorry, this is a motion. Sorry, thanks, staff and clerks. Can you help me out here? Just so that everybody is clear in the meeting as well, so that we understand.
Hi, Julia and Adam. So Adam, in your email, you requested a motion on the item. So that's what we've prepared for you.
Oh, Mary, I know there is some procedural concern around linking properties. Does this have to be a new agenda item?
Yeah, there were certainly 2 ways to go here. There was a possibility of having a motion on the item, and the chair would rule whether it was or was not appropriate to attach it to the existing report. And there is also writing a letter requesting that it be added to the agenda, and then it be brought forward. You know, just as the same way that we brought forward the report from Millwood, which wasn't on the original agenda, there was a letter that was submitted, and the chair introduced it. So if that's the way you'd like to do it, there's still the chair decision either way. And we've done the motion, and if that, so we can do it the other way also, or thought you were trying to do it this way. So
Mhm.
those are your
Which way
options.
would you like to proceed, Adam?
Madam Chair, I will. What is better for in?
No, this is.
I'm taking into consideration Mary's earlier comments. I'd like to request maybe a letter having to separate the two. I'm taking into consideration about Mary's points of linking the two properties. If that's not too much of a.
So you need to write a letter to.
Yep, I can do that. Yep.
Okay, so, oh my goodness, the chair saved one more item just in case this should happen and we needed to buy or have some time. So while Adam looks after that, let's move on to our new business item, PB 23.7. Do we have, I think we have a staff presentation on this one.
And I will just note at this time that this is exactly the same as what we did back in May, I believe. There are reasons explained in the report why we're back here, but you have had this presentation. You have had an opinion, advice to council about the value of this property already, and that's on the record. But for reasons that are explained in the report, we are doing it all over again. So I just wanted to remind you or make you, because this does seem confusing, that we're bringing back something that you've already had an opinion about, which was favorable. And you are absolutely free to have a different opinion at this point, but I'm just setting that up.
Thank you.
Is there still a presentation needed for this item?
I was just about to ask the same thing. Is there, do my fellow members want to hear the presentation? Just, no, we've heard it. Adam, you want to hear it?
Rather there's a question.
We can go in and ask questions of staff on the report, right? The presentation is just for information. So we don't bypass asking questions or that type of thing. So Adam, do you want to hear the presentation or can we move into questions?
We can move into questions.
Brilliant. So do we have questions of staff on this report? Adam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The timelines here are a bit unclear. We heard this before. Could somebody speak about, there's something about 120 days, City Council. Why is this back before us? What happened?
Good question. Patrick, do you want to take this on?
I think Tamara probably should.
Yeah, it will be me. Thank you for your question through the chair. Yes, we have as you've heard in the last presentation, Bill 23 had a great impact on registers. Similarly, Bill 23 has had tremendous impact on our requirements for time limits. And this was a circumstance to which the bill to go to council was not filed. So it had nothing to do with the quality of the advice, the decision from the TPB, or the recommendations from council itself. It was purely administrative, that the bylaw was the bill at the end of every council meeting. There's a section in the agenda which says bills, and the bill was not filed.
Thank you. Are there other questions of staff? Seeing none, is there discussion amongst ourselves? Seeing none, we have a staff report before us with recommendations. Would anybody care to adopt the recommendations of the report or move them rather? I will. Thank you, Alex. Alex, all those in favor, please. Katerina, Karosh, just checking hands there. And I think motion carries from the hands that I see. Thank you very much. All right. PB 23.2. Are we ready? I ask. I joked about it being a full moon earlier. I shouldn't have done that.
So, Madam Chair, I just wanted to interject the clerk here. So I sent Adam an email regarding the option to add new business to the agenda. Unfortunately, there's not enough time for us to, like, it has to be a letter submitted to Adam, to us by Adam. So there's not enough time for that to happen at today's meeting. So I've sent him an example of what he could submit.
Give me 2 minutes and you'll have one.
Clerks, where are you at? This is on your time. We could submit it for a future meeting. We have 2 in November.
That would be my recommendation. This adding new business to an agenda is not something we add on the fly during a meeting. It's something that takes a little bit of time and preparation on our behalf. So the recommendation would have it to come at either the next meeting or like a future meeting this year. I think there's maybe 3 left. That would be the recommendation on behalf of the clerk's office.
Thank you for your recommendation, Tanya. And Adam, where are you at?
In that case, let's please go with the motion option.
We'll go with the motion option. Fantastic.
I mean, these files have been linked together for 18 years at this point.
So
Adam, would you like us to display, or Madam Chair, would you like us to display the motion again?
Yep.
Okay,
Madam Chair.
just one moment.
So the motion before us is to request the Senior Manager Heritage Planning to consider conducting an evaluation of 644-646 Spadina Avenue for the purposes of designating it a heritage property under Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Adam, I'm going to rule this one out of order.
Okay.
Can you give a moment to Jeff, please? We do not have these addresses before us.
Okay.
I think it does a disservice to the property before us in the reporting to link it. I think there should be something that is done in and of its own right. If you want to bring a letter for a future meeting because that is your concern, I think that is a very valid way forward. And there's also the way forward where this is a listed property. So should something happen on the site, there is a mandate involved. There is a procedure, that an evaluation. But at this point, I'm going to declare the motion out of order.
Okay, thank you. I did offer to write a letter if there's 2 minutes to spare.
That is not fair to clerk's office.
Okay,
If you can
not to worry.
3 weeks, I think we can deal with 3 weeks. But that would be my recommendation to you, Adam, is to let's give a hand to clerks that way. And so that way it is, we are doing our due diligence in the best way forward as well. So I've ruled the motion out of order, and seeing, unless there's further discussion or points on this, we have a staff report with recommendations before us. Would anybody care to move the recommendations in the report? Paul, thank you. All those in favor? The motion carries. Thank you very, very much. That is everything on our agenda today. Have a wonderful Thursday and rest of October. I hope everybody still has turkey leftovers. Thank you very much. Take care, everybody.